Hello again. Been a while since I've done a fragrance review. I think I mentioned in the past that I was going to be busy branching into different things, but as always, for people that know or are on that kind of journey of or as a hobby, always enjoying fragrances, be it new or old, or revisiting, like I do a lot of the time, old fragrances that just kind of have sat there for a few years. Um, Obviously, I created the channel to kind of be give an impartial, honest review about different fragrances, but I also have a background, as I've mentioned in the past, of reviewing for different websites, be it for supplements, be it for games. So that's been on like my mind, or like some kind of agenda that I could be doing. So it's not just fragrances, I've also done hair products as well. I just thought it would be useful. Again, there's hundreds of channels on YouTube that do this sort of thing, or probably thousands now, but you know, I just it's kind of like it's always been a hobby of mine to review things. You know, even when I go to the gym, I write stuff down. I like to, I'm very, my brain is very analytical, probably. It's both a blessing and a curse. You know, you're very analytical, but then obviously you think of all negative stuff as well. But then in terms of reviews, unlike, say, certain channels that are kind of paid to positively review things that they might not necessarily in reality really agree with, but they're doing it for money. Obviously, I'm not getting any money for this. This is just purely like a passion project and breathe. So without further ado, as I said, I bought up a few, as I always do, bought up a few new fragrances of late. Now this one's an interesting one because, again, I have mentioned this in the past before. I don't tend to blind buy. My experience of buying fragrances, I tend to like to smell them in the shop. This one, however, I don't know any shops in the UK that sell this. Obviously, you can order it online. And the name of this, it's a as far as I'm aware, it's a Middle Eastern brand, Haramain Detour Exclusive Noir. Now, this was a blind buy, but in terms of me smelling it, but in terms of reviews online, it's very positive. From my understanding, it's a clone of Parfums de Marly Layton. And the long and short of that is there's lots of Middle Eastern, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, wherever they originate from, Middle Eastern countries that try to replicate very popular formulas that are usually very expensive. Not always, but in this instance, for a Parfums de Marly 100 ml of this, in terms of Layton, you're looking at £300 to £400. I think it might even be more, or sometimes less, if depending on if you buy it from a discount or not. This was £30, or ranging from £20 to £30 for 100 ml. Now, yes, the bottle is horrible. Yes, the lid and everything's very cheap and tacky. That is a common theme with a lot of these clones. However, I've never smelt the original, but from reviews online, it was very positive. So we're going to go through the notes. I'm going to put it on the skin like the usual format and do my review. Honest as always. And luckily, I also have managed to track down a sample of Layton. Now, this was a few pound, and some could argue for just a 1 ml. That's not great, but there's enough in here to give enough coverage to give a review. And again, it's meant to be very potent, very strong, and without divulging in the end conclusion. It is a very good formula. I think it's very good, hence, and there's lots of people online who also seem to think so, who also own a full bottle of Parfums de Marly. And the general consensus is that the clone is, unlike most, which, like, you know, 70% of it is accurate, this is like 90% plus. So knowing this and knowing how cheap it was, I thought, like, I'm gonna try it, you know, blind buy. Going off of reviews online, mostly positive for Gentica, or whatever the website is. I've started looking into that and using that more. That's got lots of information. So yeah, we'll go through the notes, and then put it onto the skin and give the review. So Detour Noir, I'll say it third time, Detour Noir Exclusif by Haramain is an enchanting fragrance designed to mesmerize the senses and elevate everyday experiences. It combines sophistication with luxury. Oh, blah, blah, blah. They always have a nice write-up, right? But the main priority with this is going over the notes because, again, the notes won't always dictate if the formula's good. The notes won't always be smelt exactly the same person to person. However, giving a breakdown, there might be ingredients that people pick up on in formulas that they really despise. So the likelihood is that might push them away. The opposite end of the spectrum is that there's ingredients in certain formulas that I find I tend to be really drawn to. That's something I never knew when I first started collecting fragrances. I just thought, you know, I don't know what I thought, but I went on the initial smell. As I got more experience with this, I realised there's different layers to a fragrance. So most people, and I've mentioned this before, and I mention it again because it's probably the most useful information in terms of buying a fragrance. Don't judge a fragrance on the first initial smell on the skin, or even after 5 minutes. Likewise, don't judge a fragrance on a tester strip and then blind buy, like purchase it, because again, it needs to be on your skin for several hours. If it lasts that long, that's another point again why it's important to put it onto the skin, and that gives you time to go away, review it. So obviously what I'm going to do now, I'm not going to be able to do the dry down review because that would be after several hours, and this is a potent formula. However, what I will mention is obviously I've had this for about 2 months now, so I can get in terms of the Haramain Detour Noir, so I can give the initial and the dry down review and then the overall review. So what I'm trying to get at here is the importance of reviewing the product over a period of time, as well as time on the skin, rather than a 5 minute, oh, that smells amazing, I'm going to buy it, because the dry down could be horrendous on your skin. It could be a fake or doesn't last that long on the skin for whatever reason. So again, they're important things to know. So the notes are almond, or top notes, sorry, almond, mandarin orange, bergamot and water notes. The heart eye, the middle, with civet, which again, that's a, I don't want to say controversial, but as far as I'm aware, and it's funny because you know my Bengal cat, she despises this ingredient, this smell. This is the only formula or fragrance that contains civet. I believe it's some kind of wild cat. Not quite sure where it originates from. And certain companies use civet, which I think is the poo of the cat, of this wild cat. If you Google image it, you'll see. And then obviously you can look into that further. But I know they use it in high-end brands of coffee as well. I remember hearing about that years ago. I didn't believe it, but apparently it's true. So don't let that put you off what the actual smell, because again, I knew that when I read the notes, and obviously smelling it, it's very pungent, but it gives kind of a power and a kind of a projection aspect to the formula, so a bit like oud. So it's very hit and miss with some people. Some people, like Marmite, again, that cliche saying, you either love it or you hate it, and I would say that's the same with civet and oud and so on. So rose, gardenia, geranium and water lily, that's part of the heart as well. And the base nuts are guac, wood, Lucian oud, I think that's how you spell it, or how you pronounce it, vanilla, coffee, sandalwood, Indonesian patchouli leaf, amber, oak moss and pink pepper. So there's quite a lot in this formula. So what we're going to do, apply the fragrance, and one thing I can say, it's a pressurized atomizer. I'm not just going to spray it because again, it's just wasting the formula. Of course I could do that, but just to basically explain, most of these sprays, they're just a single dispersion. You press it once, it comes out. With this, you can hold it and it gives a nice wide dispersion, which is decent. In my opinion, I actually wish more of the fragrances I have not come across did that. So without further ado, when it's a parfum as well, EDP, so it's quite potent already. So the usual 3 sprays on it's my skin. Okay, so again, it's very potent. I can picking this up already. Now I'm not going to jump the gun. Well, actually, I will. I give this is, normally I wouldn't say a beautiful fragrance, but in my opinion, it ticks every single box that you could ask for. It's projecting, it's masculine, it's got elements of sweetness, it's got elements of spice, it's dark, it's got fruit in it, or how I perceive it. It's kind of classy. It has so many facets of it. It's very, again, with just the ingredient breakdown, there's a lot going on with this. It's just so pleasant. And I'll be honest, when I first got it, I was very mixed on it, because I've never experienced a fragrance so complex like this, and with the oud and with the civet. But it's just, it's great. Like, I actually put down a 9 out of 10, but personally I would say like closer to a 9.5. The only reason it wouldn't get the perfect mark, again, the sillage is great, the performance is like 6 to 8 hours, if not longer. On skin, obviously a bit longer. I can't really find fault with it, but the faults that I can find, and being, again, open and honest about it, I think that it would be, some people wouldn't like it. Some people wouldn't like the strength of it. Some people might not like the civet or the oud, because there's so much going on. Now, I've never experienced a fragrance that's as complex as this, and considering this is a £30 clone of something that's up to £300, £400, I really can't fault it. So originally I was going to give it a 9 out of 10. I'm actually going to revise that and give it a 9.5. Again, in terms of the comparison to the Layton, obviously I've got a sample that, again, at this point I could interject and just put some on and just say, yeah, but we'll go on actually because to cut this short, so I'm not doing basically 2 reviews here and going through the breakdown of another formula. It's very similar, and from the feedback online, 90% of the people say 90% of the formula is bang on. Most people actually recommend buying this over the Parfums de Marly Layton. The only thing with the Layton is it's slightly nuanced. The initial start of the fragrance is slightly different, but the dry down is basically the same, and in the air it smells the same, but on the skin a little bit different. But yeah, it's just that as it dries down, it gets even more masculine. The oud starts to come out. It starts to get darker and woodier. And honestly, I don't like to give things a 10 out of 10, but it's that nicer fragrance that, even though, as I say, it's quite cheap, it's almost like I only want to wear it for special occasions, because in my personal opinion, it does literally everything you can want on my skin, in my opinion. The sillage is great. The projection, or the same thing, is decent. The performance is excellent, or very good for what it is. Can't fault the price. Yeah, the bottle looks tacky. Yeah, it's a clone, but long and short of it, like a 9.5 out of 10. I really, again, the only fault that I can find with it is that for some people, they might find it too strong. Some people it might not smell how it smells on my skin. They might detect more of the civet or so on that I do, that might not be to their liking. And going back to the point I made, don't always judge a fragrance on the initial smell. Give it a while. Yes, of course, you don't want to smell awful at the first hurdle, but also review it at a later date in terms of on the skin after an hour or two. Go away from the fragrance shop or just wherever. And yeah, I've had compliments on it. I've only wore it several times, but yeah, I can't really fault it, and there's not really anything else I can say. So Haramain, Detour Noir Exclusif, highly recommended, 9.5 out of 10.